Okay, good morning. Thank you for joining our webinar this morning. I'm going to turn it over to our director, Joe Harris, to start the web conference. Joe?
Thank you, Tori. Hello and welcome to today's webinar on competency-based education in higher education. My name is Joe Harris, and I am the director of the College and Career Readiness and Success Center at the American Institutes for Research, which is hosting this webinar. I want to give a special good morning welcome to our West Coast colleagues who are joining us early in their workday. Next slide. Please note we will be live tweeting and encourage you to do the same using the hashtags you see listed on the screen. If you joined us today as part of Connected Educators Month, please use badge code CION113. Additional information about how to access your badge will be included in the chat box located in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. Because of the high number of participants, all attendees will be muted throughout the session. We encourage you to ask questions in the chat box during the presentations. You can direct your questions to individual presenters or to the group as a whole. We will use post-webinar blog posts to address questions that we don't have time to address today. Next slide. The CCRS Center is part of the Comprehensive Center Network, which includes 7 national content centers and 15 regional comprehensive centers that work directly with state education agencies to promote key school improvement priorities. Next slide. Our center's mission is to support state college and career readiness initiatives through customized technical assistance and to share information and promote discussion with a broader range of stakeholders on CCRS-related issues and topics like competency-based education, our focus today. Next slide. We do this through serving as a technical assistance hub and acting as a broker of information and resources from across the federal technical assistance network, as well as other CCRS organizations. We also develop new knowledge around key CCRS topics by creating products and tools, cataloging relevant research and resources, hosting webinars such as this, sharing information through social media, and just-in-time support for specific RCCs and states. Next slide. You can learn more about our work and access these and other resources through our website at www.ccrscenter.org. An archive of today's webinar will be posted to the website in the next few days. Next slide. Today's webinar is the third in a series focused on competency-based education. Previous webinars, conducted in collaboration with our partners at the American Youth Policy Forum, examined both the state policy implications and district implementation considerations of developing competency-based education systems in K-12. These previous webinars are also archived on the CCRS Center website, and short summaries of each event are available through the Ready for Success blog, along with follow-up Q&A from our presenters. The term competency-based education has multiple meanings across the K-12 system, from a general reference to increased personalization of learning to more specific meanings related to the development of its explicit competencies by which student learning can be measured. For today's conversation, we'd like to provide this general definition developed by Competency Works for you to keep in mind during the presentations. In short, student success is accomplished through a mastery of explicit objectives that are measured through positive learning experience, buttressed by timely individualized supports. These competencies promote the application and creation of knowledge, as well as the development of skills and dispositions. Next slide, please. Today's webinar aims to move the CBE conversation from K-12 into post-secondary by providing an overview of how competency-based education is implemented in institutions of higher education across the country, sharing examples from leading 2- and 4-year programs, and discussing policy and practice considerations for institutions of higher education. Next slide. So I'll now turn it over to our moderator for today's presentation, Tori Sertz, to get us started.
Thanks, Joe. Good morning, everyone. As you can see from the slide in front of you, we have assembled a really great panel to talk with you today and share their expertise in competency-based education through the lens of higher education. First, we have Becky Klein-Collins, who's the Director of Research for the Council of Adult and Experiential Learning, and she's going to talk about kind of the national view of competency-based and share what they're seeing across the country and how various institutions are approaching competency-based ed, and also talk a little bit about their prior learning assessment. So how do they assess learning experiences and knowledge and skills that are developed before students are coming into higher education institutions, which I know is a big issue that came up in some of the pre-conference questions around how do you assess and what does that look like. Then we'll talk to Dr. Bill Ryan and Dr. Sandy Cook from the Kentucky Community and Technical College System, who are going to share their Learn on Demand program and talk about how that program was developed, what it is, and again, kind of provide a perspective of what it looks like in an actual institution. And then Sally Johnstone, who is the Vice President for Academic Advancement at Western Governors University, is also going to share the work that they've done and some work that they've been doing with a network of community colleges as well. So we have a very packed agenda, but we're real excited about the information that we're going to be able to share and the discussion that we'll have today. And so we encourage you, as Joe mentioned, that during the presentations, please start to add your questions in the chat box, and we'll try to get to as many of them as possible. So I'm going to turn it over to Becky Klein-Collins, who is going to kind of kick off our discussion and talk about kind of what's happening in the national conversation around competency-based ed and higher ed. Becky?
Thanks, Tori. Thanks so much for having me today and for hosting this conversation about competency-based degree programs in higher education. My organization is CALE. It's the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning. We are a national nonprofit organization focused on the adult and non-traditional learner. Today I am providing some background on the changes currently happening in higher education, how that is leading to a new emphasis on learning outcomes, and what some of the considerations and challenges are. There's been a lot of coverage in the national media about a crisis in higher education these days. What's behind this crisis is a convergence of a lot of different trends. I'm going to zero in on two big ones, quality and cost. We hear from employers that the recent graduates they hire are not, quote-unquote, work-ready, and they lack some of the basic skills like writing and math, or they lack some of the soft skills like critical thinking to be a successful contributor in the workplace. Students also complain about the quality of education, but they do so in conjunction with the other part of the crisis, the tremendous rise in the cost of higher education. Despite all the evidence showing that people with bachelor's degrees make more money and are more employable, students are looking at their potential student loan debt and wondering what they're getting in return. It used to be that improving higher education meant finding ways to expand access to education for everyone. Now there's a shift in the focus, a new paradigm, that we need to be offering higher quality education and doing that at a much more affordable price. And by the way, we have to do it with fewer resources, with a more diverse student body, and we have to get better results. And better results are not just in terms of degree completion, which is high on everybody's radar right now, but also making sure that graduates have the ability to find employment. And all of this is in the context of a new phenomenon of MOOCs, massive open online courses, through companies like Coursera or Udacity or edX, which provide free courses taught by professors from elite institutions. This is putting a lot of pressure on higher education. But it also presents an opportunity. It's changing how many people are viewing the concept of higher education. It used to be that degree completion was about accumulating the right combination of credit hours. Credit hours being a fixed amount of time spent in learning activities. 2 years of study for an associate degree, 4 years of study for a bachelor's. But truthfully, the amount that was learned could vary a lot from student to student, depending on what courses they took, what instructors they had, how much they put into it. Now we're seeing some questions about this old way of doing things. Maybe it doesn't matter how much time is spent, how many weeks a student studies a particular subject. Maybe time should be variable, and what we should count instead is how much is learned. Two strategies in particular adhere to this concept. They disregard the concept of seat time, time on task, number of weeks studying a subject, and in some cases they move entirely away from the fixation on the credit hour, and they focus instead on what the student has learned, what the student knows how to do. These two strategies are competency-based degree programs and prior learning assessment. Over the past 2 years, CALE has been documenting the competency-based degree programs that have been emerging in higher education. And Joe provided some nice elements of what competency degree programs have in K through 12, and these are the same for higher education in a lot of ways. What's important to note is that there's no single program model that exists within higher education for competency-based degree programs. There are lots of varieties. And I'll describe in a few minutes how they differ. But first I'd like to point out some of the unifying concepts of competency-based education. First, the competencies themselves. We're not just talking about an educated person being someone with a lot of knowledge. Students who successfully complete competency-based degree programs are not just expected to know a lot of things, they are expected to know how to apply what they have learned in real-world situations. Second, quality. Defining concepts, defining the competencies that are required for a degree is assumed to help ensure the value of a college education. And this is because of the third component, which is assessment. Competency-based degree programs all encompass some degree of assessment of the competencies that are required. And this is assessment that validates the learning. Fourth is the focus on learning. In these programs, it does not matter, as I said before, how long a student has engaged with learning material or how many courses they have studied. What's important is what they have learned, and that is really the way these programs zero in on what's important. And finally, competency-based degree programs are student-centered. They meet students where they are, and they do this in a couple of different ways. One is by providing students with a variety of different learning opportunities to meet their particular learning styles. In these programs, as you'll hear later, students have access to lots of different kinds of learning resources, from video lectures to written materials to projects that they complete in order to demonstrate their competencies. So this is one way that the programs are student-centered. The other way that they're student-centered is by recognizing the learning that a student brings to the program, whether from their work experience or from self-study. These programs are designed to identify what students already know and then help them access the learning that they do not yet know. And so students are never need to sit through courses or material that they've already mastered. Competency-based degree programs also have unique components. Some areas can vary dramatically. For example, the ties to the credit hour in these programs really vary. If you imagine a continuum, in one end of the continuum, some programs integrate their competency approaches into the existing credit hour system, the traditional course-based credit hour approach to higher education. Students must demonstrate competencies through assessment, but they also still accumulate credit hours and take courses the way a traditional student would. On the other end of the spectrum, or the other end of the continuum, some programs are designed so that degree completion is primarily determined by the student progressing through a series of assessments. Other variations are in terms of what types of learning activities the students are engaged in to gain the competencies, what the role of the faculty is, and what methods of assessment are used. One type of competency-based program that we are seeing more and more of these days is what many are calling the direct assessment approach. This is the approach that is taking the biggest steps away from the traditional credit hour-based system. And assessments are what determine the student's progress towards degree completion. Also, faculty in these programs serve primarily as advisors or coaches, and students can progress independently and at their own pace. The two programs you'll be hearing from today later in this webinar both fall more on this end of the spectrum, along with some other programs that you may have been reading about, including Southern New Hampshire University's College for America or the University of Wisconsin's Flexible Options program. I would like to point out, however, that while so many of the CBA programs we have been hearing about lately are very new, including many of on this page here, in fact, many of those on this page have emerged just in the last year, the competency-based education concept itself is not new. There are several colleges, in fact, that have been offering a competency-based approach for 40 years, and they're on this page. Some of them are on this page. This recent surge of interest in competency-based programs is raising several questions that the field is working on. And by field, I mean the colleges that are offering these programs in conjunction with regional accreditors and the U.S. Department of Education. The big one is financial aid. As we see more and more programs stepping away from the credit hour, there are questions about how these programs can qualify for Title IV financial aid eligibility. Some programs have tried to solve this problem by converting their competencies to credit hours. Others are seeking special permission from the U.S. Department of Education. But there are, at this time, a lot of unanswered questions about which programs qualify and how financial aid can work with these models. So I think the message here is stay tuned. There's probably a lot more to come on this topic in the next year or two. The field is also beginning to work with each other on other issues and questions, like what are the quality standards for a good CBE program? What does this changing role for faculty mean, both for the faculty and for higher education? And how do we track competencies in our data systems that are designed to track and report only on credit hours? Is there a way to develop a standard data tracking system that can help these kinds of programs go to scale and be offered by more institutions? Regional accreditors are also struggling to understand what their roles are for ensuring quality and providing appropriate peer review for programs that may not be fully understood. Finally, I really appreciated seeing some of the questions that some of you sent in advance of this webinar. One person asked how these kinds of programs interface with the Common Core. This issue has definitely been raised in the field and is part of what I think is probably a larger discussion happening within higher education about degree qualifications frameworks. And if there's time during the Q&A, we might want to revisit that question. In a few minutes, we will transition to the next part of the webinar where you will hear from two CBE programs. And I'm sorry, I've been using the term CBE for competency-based education. So I hope you followed that part. And as I mentioned, these two programs fall more on the direct assessment side of the spectrum. But before I transition over to them, I would like to talk about prior learning assessment. One of the unifying concepts of CBE programs is that they meet students where they are. This means that the programs are designed so that what a student already knows can count towards their degree. One way that higher education programs can do this, whether they're competency-based or not, is through prior learning assessment, or PLA. Today's students have considerable learning from work experience that they bring into the classroom, such as on-the-job learning or corporate training. Many have learning from military experience or from a lifetime of self-study and volunteer service. Prior learning assessment is a process for evaluating the knowledge and skills in order to award college credit for the college-level learning gained from those experiences. There are a number of ways that colleges can choose to evaluate college-level learning towards academic credit. Some colleges offer challenge exams in which the faculty develop customized tests based on certain courses, so students can earn credit for those courses. Another way is through credit recommendations, either through the National College Credit Recommendation Service or through ACE. A third method is through standardized tests such as CLEP, or many of you are probably more familiar with AP exams and IB exams. Those are considered prior learning assessment tools. And then finally, some colleges offer the option for students to develop individual student portfolios of their learning that the student provides with supporting documentation of what they know and can do. There are lots of arguments for offering PLA. Most obviously, it can save students time and money. But we have always also heard from college advisors who believe that PLA had a motivating effect on students and helped them persist towards a degree. 2 years ago, Cale conducted a study of 48 institutions and found that and more than 62,000 adult learners, we found that students with PLA credits are in fact 2.5 times more likely to persist to graduation than students without PLA credits. So now we have some evidence to support that idea that PLA can help spur students on to degree completion. In terms of our discussion today, another argument for PLA is what it has in common with competency-based programs. With both strategies, what is important is what a student has learned, what they know, what they can do. What is not important is where and how they learned it. And the idea that assessment provides a way for college-level learning to count towards a degree. For the record, the general public agrees with many of these concepts. Earlier this year, Lumina Foundation and Gallup conducted a national survey that asked about PLA. They found that 87% of Americans think students should be able to receive college credit for knowledge and skills acquired outside the classroom, and 75% would be more likely to enroll in higher ed if they could receive college credit for what they already know. And they also like the idea of focusing on what someone has learned rather than how much time had been spent in a classroom. 70% said that if a student demonstrates that they have mastered material in less time, the student should get credit for a course without completing the full session. So I think that's where we can open it up to questions, I think, Tori.
Great, thanks, Becky. So we had a few questions that were submitted and that I'm going to kind of lead with, but still encourage you guys on the webinar to add your questions to the chat box, and we'll definitely pick those up as well. So Becky, you were talking about some of the perceptions around how prior learning assessments or CBE can help save students time and money. It has this motivating effect. What have you guys heard from the employers or the business community? We had a number of questions come in wanting to know how this kind of new model, or for those programs that have been around for 40 years, not so new model, but how this leads to career readiness. And have you heard from employers around do they, or how do they support this notion of the prior learning assessments in terms of helping students earn those degrees or certificates or certifications?
Sure. Well, I think there are a couple of different questions in that question. One is how employers are part of the competency-based degree programs. And I think probably Sally and Sandy and Bill might want to chime in on this or address this in their sessions. But a lot of the competency-based programs where they involve employers is in when they define the competency frameworks that their degree programs are going to be geared towards. So each competency-based degree program, one of the first steps that you need to do is define what it is that your degree is going to stand for, what it is that your students are going to need to demonstrate, and that's the competency framework that stands behind your degree. And a lot of the programs that have been developing these competency-based programs have been doing so because they've been hearing from employers about skills and abilities that they're not seeing in the workers that they're hiring. And so the colleges are involving the employers in these discussions about competencies and what kinds of competencies should be part of the degree program itself. Also, Southern New Hampshire's College for America program works directly with employers. In fact, all of their students come from the employer partners that they're working with. So there's a very direct link between the employers and the higher ed institution in that situation. In terms of prior learning assessment, employers care about this as well. Cale has for many years worked with employers who have offered tuition assistance programs to their workers. And we've been helping these workers make good decisions about how to use their tuition assistance programs. But in addition, we've always encouraged them to try to access prior learning assessment options at the institutions where they are taking classes or engaged in a post-secondary program. And employers appreciate this because they recognize that it's saving them tuition dollars by having their students take advantage of those opportunities. And so we're doing a lot of work right now with employers and encouraging them to take a second look at their tuition assistance policies to make sure that these kinds of assessments would be covered by those programs as well.
Thanks. And then as you've kind of also been looking at various programs, have you found, or in talking with, as you were talking about with the counselors, any successful models, or can you share any models that universities have employed around student support when they go into these programs, or when they are going into the online environment or the blended environment, or taking those prior learning assessments?
Sure. I think you'll find it kind of striking how much attention these programs and how much they invest in having the student support services be part of this. I mentioned in the presentation how the role of faculty in these programs is very different. They're not sage on a stage faculty members. They're not, sitting in front of a lecture hall delivering their lectures. Their role is as learning facilitators. And so they help students access learning materials. But they also have a role in terms of mentoring and coaching and advising students. And there are also, in some of these programs, that's one role for one type of faculty member, but then they also have additional coaches that are part of the program that really make sure that students are continuing to stay engaged in the program, that they are continually taking part in learning activities, and they're moving along according to, with a good pace through the assessments. And when students are, if they're starting to stop out or drop out of the program, there are ways that their systems are tracking the student engagement and allowing the program to reach out to the student to make sure they stay engaged. So student support has been a huge component of how these programs are designed and structured in the first place, because students are working so independently and on their own and at their own pace. So these kind of supports are really seen as critical to their success.
And have you seen any examples of applying a competency-based ed or prior learning assessment to graduate education or licensure-based programs?
Yes. Actually, there's a lot of these things. So competency-based education in graduate education, right now, I believe Western Governors has a graduate program. I think, Sally, you'll need to weigh in on that. But also Westminster College has an MBA program that is competency-based as well. Licensure-based programs, the best-known example, I think, is Excelsior College's School of Nursing program, which is entirely competency-based and is also a direct assessment type of program where students really progress by completing assessments. There are lots of other nursing programs across the country that are starting to be more competency-based, but not so much direct assessment model, more really designing their programs around a competency framework in a very deliberate way. PLA with graduate education is not very common, to be honest, and I think that's part of the nature of the beast with graduate education, although I know that Capella is doing some PLA with some of their graduate programs, and so I think that answers the question.
Great, well, thank you. Well, this is not the only time you have a chance to pepper Becky with some questions, but we are going to move on to our next presentation, which is the Kentucky Community Technical College System and their Learn on Demand program. And we have Dr. Bill Ryan and Dr. Sandy Cook that are going to kind of walk us through the Learn on Demand program and their direct to degree program. And so I'm going to turn it over first to Bill, who's going to get that presentation started. And I'm going to ask Patrice on our end to move the slides to that first Kentucky slide, please.
Well, let's take a look at the publications first. We'll have to come back and see all the good references that were shared here. Those were good. We'll have to come back and grab those. But good morning, everyone, and you can advance the slide. And thank you for letting us come and talk to you this morning. You can advance that too. and we're trying to be good on our time here. And just to give a quick overview, just in terms of perspective, the Kentucky Community and Technical College System has 16 colleges with over 70 campuses throughout the Commonwealth. Our enrollment, as you see, is fluctuates right around 100,000. Currently, about 38,000 enrolling in our online courses, with 17% of them strictly online. And currently, we have two online options: the Learn by Term, our traditional, term-based, semester-based online systems, and then Learn on Demand, which we'll talk a little bit more if you would advance the slide. The Learn on Demand program came about when there was some research done in the state looking at, who our population is. As you can see here, the population in the state is primed for continuing their education. As just remarked on from the materials that Cale brought back out, there are many adults, and they're looking for unique opportunities to meet that flexible schedule. If you'd advance, please. And what we were agreeing upon, as we just heard a little bit, is that our typical student is a working adult, along with our community college structure, mostly female, has family responsibilities. We have found in the Learn on Demand program the broad range of ages, from 19 to 54 and above. Key, I think, is the idea that they're comfortable with technology, but more importantly, they're looking for that individualized approach. They want something they can do on their time, that they can balance around the opportunities of that life brings them in terms of family and work. If you could advance, please. The program started back in 2007. The Kentucky folks had started out putting out requests for proposals to the colleges, looking at the following kinds of courses and programs. They went along with, I just heard talking about working with business and industry. One of the ones in particular that is about to roll out is working with the automotive industry, our AmTech curriculum. I think working with business and industry to identify those competencies in our integrated engineering technology, but we also went through the general education and college readiness developmental education. Originally working with Presidium, which was bought by Blackboard, had a call center for the Blackboard student services to support our students in terms of technical support. Created a quality assurance program for our courses, a rubric that can be used for the consistency of our course delivery, and a program for our facilitators that are delivering online to that student at a distance. I like the word there. They truly are facilitating. They're not doing that stage on the stage. And along the way, we've been fine-tuning our infrastructure. Blackboard is the LMS across the state system, and as is PeopleSoft, and been finding ways to coordinate and integrate those two large tools together. Next slide, please. Some of the key features: you can start anytime, anywhere, just like any course, but the idea of a rolling registration at that point in time. They are modularized, and you get credit for prior learning. And I'll talk about that in just a second. Competency-based, immediate access to the e-resources from textbooks and online resources as soon as you get into the course. We provide virtual student services and success coaches, and offer degrees, diplomas, certificates, just-in-time learning opportunities as well. Next slide, please. This is kind of a snapshot of a module. There are anywhere from 3 to 6 modules per course. Key to this is the idea that credit for prior learning is where we come into the play here, where you can save time using Learn on Demand. You can take a pretest into the module. You get through the pretest, you can go on to a comprehensive post-test. And that post-test can be various components of competency levels, from peer assessments to demonstration of skills and other opportunities that bring along testing strategies into play. The key, though, is that if you take the opportunity to take that pretest, you can then move quickly on to the next module. So you can actually demonstrate what you already know. And as we just pointed out, you can save time and not have to sit in that 16-week class. Next slide, please. A lot of this is based, though, on the back end of creating success for those students. There are multiple tools that come together. We use Starfish, our Blackboard Student Services help, integrate with PeopleSoft, bringing in advising at the local level also, but helping the student initially find the right way to get to that student. You can continue on with the slide. And we also use support systems for learning for BrainFuse, and it's done all the way through NACADA, which is the National Advising and Board. but it comes through our success coaches. Next slide, please. You can keep going all the way through there. There's some dissolves in there. I apologize. I should have taken those out. The success coaches are really focused on retention and creating that success. And just as a point of reference, between spring of 12 and spring of 13, the coaches came in November of 12. We saw a 57% drop in our attrition rate in our Learn on Demand students. And it comes all the way. You can keep advancing the slide there. I focused on the idea that they are truly being the high touch in this high-tech world. It starts out with Starfish, which is a great early alert system. It is a automatic system as well as a manually flagged capable system, so that if a student doesn't log on in a certain amount of time, it alerts the coach, the student, and the instructor simultaneously that we haven't had contact. Instructors can also put in manual flags, so if they put out an assessment and the score is at a certain level, and it can say, the students that don't get this, let me know. And it automatically flags. And it brings it full circle so that they know that the communication and the activity and the engagement remains high. And when students need that extra help, we have BrainFuse, which provides 24/7 math tutoring. That's 8 hours of it, which is live tutoring, one-day turnaround for term papers. And we've been averaging about 300 hours a month for support for our students in an online environment. You can continue on, please. These tools are there available 24/7, 365 days, extremely personalized for all of our students. Go ahead. Some of the challenges we had, though, that we found out was the development time for our courses was much longer than anticipated. Just 2 to 3 years for our first courses and programs to come out. Some of the challenges included financial aid and getting the awards out to our students. Now, our chief academic officers were not challenged at all. I hope everyone's smiling there. The really question came up is working with them to identify things like full-time faculty load. How are we going to make this fit into the system? And the same thing with the colleges is how do we ensure that this is not a competition with their traditional term-based online offerings, but a way to get to an additional area of the learning community that isn't being, whose needs aren't being met by the traditional methods. Marketing's been a challenge, and originally we didn't have any developmental education. Next, please. Financial aid. I probably should just leave it there. I think we probably have a lot of knowledge about that. It's a manual process, and it's just difficult right now to have a online program that is term-based and an online program that is not as term-based as Learn on Demand. So it's been trying to understand how we can ensure that our students don't get caught in between the two different kinds of models while they're in only one financial aid model. And we're currently working with the U.S. Department of Education, as you see there, to be an experimental site to see if we can find ways to meet both of those needs that our students want and have asked for that flexibility. Next, please. Some of these challenges in marketing really comes down to what is an online student? What is a module? What is a competency-based? What is credit for prior learning? How do we get that kind of conversation out to the overall community? How do we get it both across the state but in the local markets as well? There's some conversation that I think is changing now about how we can get into the local markets to meet that different need. And some of the things that have helped open up the discussion is the fact that we've included our success coaches. We've included virtual advisors, and they're seeing the benefit because it's helping their students that are local as well as those at a distance. Next, please. Originally, we didn't have developmental education, but as we included it on, was trying to find out ways to streamline that ed opportunities so that we could get our students fast-tracked, and they didn't have to wait all 16 weeks to go through a ed course. I think that has been part of the challenge with developmental education, and the modules are beginning to be an opportunity for them to streamline and speed up the process and get right into the mainstream. And part of that was through the College for America grant, where we were able to bring in the success coaches as well as do some of the course development work. Next, please. So our target audience in terms of the college readiness is as you see here. I'm sure many of you are in the same kind of areas. I think the focus has been that we can create a broad range of programs and a broad range of offerings to meet the needs of the community that are in a schedule that is conducive for them and fits their lifestyle in a much more flexible manner, and allows them to go through parts that they already know and speed up the process where they need to, or slow down the process when they want to, or they have to perhaps. Next slide, please. And the key issue for that has been really our development of the modular course and the focus of letting people go through and test out. And that brings us to our next initiative, which is called Direct to Degree, and I will turn that over to my colleague, Dr. Sandy Cook.
Hello, this is Sandy Cook, and I'm the System Director for Distance Learning in the Kentucky Community and Technical College System, and I want to talk with you about Direct to Degree. Next slide, please. This is a general focus and goals of the Direct to Degree. Direct to Degree is built on the Learn on Demand model. The Direct to Degree purpose is to assist with the college completion agenda in Kentucky. In Kentucky, as across the nation, there is the challenge of getting individuals through associate degree work within 24 months, 2 years. Our colleges typically, our students typically take longer than that to get an associate degree. They take longer than 4 years to get a bachelor's degree. So the Direct to Degree is a very prescribed path toward an associate degree. This is a transfer program to any of the public universities in Kentucky. What we will do is, number one, reorient the flow of the courses from a parallel model to a sequential model. Students will take one course at a time. They will be full-time students. The aim to get complete within 2 years or less. We also want to deploy a new tuition model that will both provide incentives and rewards for progress. And our third goal is to implement alternative financial aid models that support the reconfigured delivery and tuition structure. Next slide, please. So part of the challenge in Kentucky is to raise the educational attainment level of our citizens. So our goal is to double the numbers. These are our colleges across the state of Kentucky. And Direct to Degree, again, the aim of this delivery is to help us with the completion agenda. Next slide, please. So we took a look at Learn by Term in figuring out this Direct to Degree model. And as we thought about expanding educational opportunities for our citizens, we looked at Learn by Term. You see, we have lost days that individuals could be learning. So with Learn on Demand, next slide, please, we looked at saving time. So we recovered the time, and Learn on Demand, rather, is a delivery model where students can start any day of the year, 24/7. Next slide. And then comparing Learn on Demand with reorienting toward a model where students can save time and money. So Direct to Degree is a prescribed path. They start with the CIP 103, this is a computer literacy class, and move down the line toward the 60 hours toward an associate degree. The aim, again, is to complete in 24 or less months. The aim is to help students save both time and money. So how do we do that? Next slide. To reduce the cost, currently with the Learn on Demand model and term-based, a cost is still configured based on tuition. So while students can save time with Learn on Demand, with Direct to Degree, they can save money as well by reducing the number of months it takes to get their associate degree. Next slide, please. So we're working with NCIMS, the National Center for Higher Education Management System, to help us configure a dashboard where we can put in different scenarios of of tuition costs based on the costs that we pull from our data to deliver our direct-to-degree. This analytic tool will enable us to put in different scenarios so we can come up with what this monthly charge would be. So the idea with direct-to-degree is that students, again, will take one course at a time. The model for cost will be a cost by the month, so a monthly charge for tuition. And then we also wanted to configure different financial aid models. Next slide. The financial aid, as Bill mentioned earlier, we're exploring alternative models. Mainly, we would like to become an experimental site, so that particularly with direct-to-degree, where we are offering a sequenced path toward an associate degree, where students pay by the month, and financial aid also distributed so that it's associated with a monthly disbursement model. And with that, we hope that we can incentivize students to complete in less than 24 months, that they can save time and save money and move on toward their bachelor's degree. Next slide, please. So the outcomes for our direct-to-degree, again, a linear sequential program that allows students to optimize their learning time and increase their completion rate, tuition models that increase affordability and rewards learning. We're looking at a monthly subscription model, and alternative financial aid models that remove the artificial time barriers based on aid distributed on completion of competencies. And the tool that I mentioned to you from NCIMS will be shareable once we have that complete, but it will enable other institutions to explore and optimize tuition strategies for competency-based models. Next slide. And that completes my presentation.
Great, thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Bill. We're going to move directly into the next presentation and have Dr. Sally Johnstone talk with us about Western Governors University and the work that they're doing, and then we'll have a big chunk of time at the end for questions for all of our panelists. So Sally, it's over to you.
All right. Tori, thank you very much. I assume I'm audible. Somebody can send me a message, or if I'm not.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. All right. Why don't we go ahead and go to the first slide there. Western Governors University had the advantage of not having to translate things, but starting from scratch, and it really was founded by a bunch of governors. And the notion behind it was to create a learning environment that was, as it says, independent of time and place, had to be competency-based, and would be credible to both academic institutions and employers. And my colleague at CAO, I think, explained to you some of the issues that we now see in the public press around higher education and concerns. Those issues are not that new. They've been around for a long time, as many of you must know. And this was an attempt on the part of the governors to move things in some new directions. Why don't we hit the next slide there. Okay, where are we now? We have 4 colleges. We offer bachelor's and master's degrees. These should be no surprise in that they are workforce needs within the states. If you'll hit go there, or I don't, who's the person running the buttons? Is that Tori? Stay where you are right
Patrice. Now. Yeah, Sally, if you just say, let Patrice know when you want him to move.
Patrice, okay. Thank you, Patrice. So basically, all of our students we consider full-time, and we screen them coming into the program, basically saying this is the kind of time commitment you need to make. and you have to have certain skill levels to be ready for baccalaureate master's work. Our cost is under $6,000 a year. We are a private not-for-profit, and we run the entire university on that. And that also includes the learning resources, or what some people would call textbooks, although we don't use books. Our current enrollment is about 40,000 students, and Patrice, could you hit go? This is the distribution of our students across the U.S. We are a U.S.-based institution and definitely focused on the needs of the workforces in the states. And you can see your own state there and see what's going on. Patrice, could you hit go? Our most successful students actually I have to say, I say start with some college experience. The very most successful students have associate degrees. They have come out of and successfully completed community college. But almost all of our students have work experience, and they're really motivated to earn a degree. The average age is 37, as it says there on the slide. And the entire focus of our support staff in the university, which is not insubstantial, is really geared toward trying to help students be successful. Patrice? Let me just give you a sense of the model. If you start in the upper left-hand corner in the yellow circle that says Program Council, this is how we develop our programs. We start with a program council that includes both representatives, high-level representatives from industry and relevant fields, and academics that are external to our own institution, but they are national experts in what they do. They give us input and help us develop at a sort of 30,000-foot level basic competencies behind a degree program. Moving down the corner there, we then take those high-level competencies and put them, or give them to a working group that includes some external experts in the field, but also our internal staff. And that may be our internal faculty, but it may also be instructional designers and a different set of expertise that will work together to bring those high-level competencies down to something that looks like it's approaching a course. It's not quite there yet, but they are a variety of topics that are going to be spread across the curriculum of the program. That then goes into a program development team, or the output of that. And the program developers turn these things into course-level activities. And the course-level activities are then further broken down into specific learning objectives, and that program development group also identifies learning resources. One of the directives from the governors when WGU was founded was, you don't need to replicate what's already out there. Use existing resources. So we don't invent our own learning resources. We use a variety of different providers, including commercial publishers, open education resources. We're in conversation and beginning to adapt some of the MOOCs. We are talking with and using the Carnegie Mellon Open Learning Initiative materials, but we've asked for modifications and have been able to get them to meet the needs of our specific students. So they're not time-based. All of our working with students is time-independent. Once we get these learning objectives, they then are given to our assessment team. And our assessment team is a different set of experts, including psychometricians as well as faculty, both internal and external. And they develop the assessments, and those assessments take many forms. And we've already heard that from both Cale and Kentucky, of the ways in which different types of assessments can be done. Once all of that is done, it is released as a program, and students begin to use the materials and move through toward a degree. And the reason there's all these circles, and it's a big circle, is that we revise these things on a regular basis. We're constantly watching through analytics and large numbers of students working through materials to determine what's really working for students and what isn't. And when we discover an unusual glitch in student performance on assessments or student use of materials, or word coming back to our faculty from students that this is a lousy resource, we immediately go in and try to correct it. Patrice, next slide. So one of the things that I just wanted to articulate here that you've sort of heard, but the notion of a competency-based education program flips the traditional relationship between time and mastery. So in a normal academic setting, a student starts at the beginning of a term, works through the materials, and at the end of the term has either mastered it at a high level and gets an A, sort of gets it and maybe gets a C, or doesn't get it and fails the course. And the only recourse is then to repeat the course if the student wants to continue to progress. In a competency-based program, the concept is a student can progress at his or her own rate. Now, that's within parameters, but they can progress at their own rates, and they can accelerate or take longer in certain parts of what they're doing, but it has no effect on the the goodness or badness. They're not graded. They either pass it or they don't. They've mastered it or they haven't. And that does allow them to accelerate through courses or parts of courses based on what they already know and regardless of where they've learned it. And that's how we can easily integrate external resources. And as some of these external resources are getting better and better and more focused on personalized learning, it's real easy to slot them in, and that has to do with our model. Patrice? Let me just say something about our faculty, although, excuse me, you heard a version of it with our colleagues from Kentucky. They attended a seminar, oh gosh, year and a half ago, and learned our model and then adapted it. And we're doing a lot of that now, that is helping people understand a model that we know is successful, but then having them adapt it. And in our model, a key element is our faculty. We have about somewhere between 800 and 900 full-time faculty, and they're in two categories. One category we call student mentors. They are not students. They're at least master's level prepared, but they work directly on a regular basis with our students, frequently with weekly phone calls. They may be very brief if the student is doing well, or they can be longer. We also have course mentors who are typically doctorally prepared, and they focus on specific courses, and they act as tutors within those courses. And they will develop webinars, they'll develop communities of practice. They have a wide array, and they also do one-on-one tutoring, but they have a wide array of tools that they use to keep students on progress and not have them stuck in a personalized learning environment in which the resources are just not getting them to the next point. Patrice? Could you, yeah, thanks. Wanted to just throw this in because I call it sort of a proof of concept. We survey employers using external agencies so that we're not asking and finding out. But this is the kind of information that we're getting back as we look at what kinds of things we're doing. Now, it's important to recognize that within the WGU model, we are constantly tweaking our services to students because the model allows us to do it. It was designed to allow us to do it. So, for instance, our one-year retention rate in 2006 was 67%. Our one-year retention rate in 2012 was 79%, and it continues to climb. Last year, we were over 80%. And as all of you who play with statistics know, when you get more students, it's harder to move that bar, but we continue to move that bar. The whole organization is designed around helping students be successful, and we can do that because of the flexibility of the CBE framework. Next slide there, please. There's, as all of you probably know, a continuing interest in competency-based activities. The Gates Foundation is currently supporting a project that we're running in Washington, Indiana, Florida, and Texas with colleges as partners, and we have a sort of sister project that was funded by TAC through the Department of Labor with colleges in Ohio, different colleges in Florida and Texas. And we are assisting these colleges in going through the process of adapting, sort of taking the WGU framework and taking the parts of it that work and the parts that don't, and adapting those to fit within their own systems and structures. And some of the challenges that my colleagues from Kentucky pointed out are very similar to the challenges that are going on for these colleges. But they're overcoming them, and 4 of the 11 colleges with which we're working enrolled students in August, and the other 7 will begin enrolling in January. We're also working with the Western Association of Food Chains, and if anyone is curious about that, they can talk to us about it, but they've redesigned their curriculum that runs through community colleges into a competency-based education program. Next slide, please. One of the things that we have found out as we have worked with these colleges is trying to refine our ability to help other colleges be able to develop competency-based education programs. And the principles, these 5 design principles that are on the screen right now, seem to hold. And there's a longer paper coming out in March in Change magazine that reflects examples and everything within this. But what's important are really boiling this down to, as you're moving into a competency-based degree program, what do you need to pay attention to? And you can see these reflect the kinds of things that we've talked about. So obviously valid and robust competencies, students being able to learn at a variable pace and being fully supported, very effective learning resources that are available to students anytime and are reusable, and the process of mapping the competencies to courses, to learning outcomes, to assessments, being explicit, because this is a key area that we think of when we think of quality assurance. And the accrediting community seems very happy with this kind of activity. We also feel very strongly that the assessments need to be secure and quite reliable. One of the things that we do that's a little different from Kentucky is our students can register and start their program the first of any month. There's some screening that goes on beforehand, usually takes about a month, and they can begin the first of the month, and then they're on 6-month terms. So that's the way that framework works for us. Our partner colleges are finding a host of interesting ways in which they are fitting these variable learning and starting points into the needs of their states and their systems and their local campus. And I keep trying to hit my button here, which doesn't work. Patrice, could you go to the last one there, please? Great. Thanks so very much, and I am ready, Tori, whenever you are, to address any questions that may come up.
Great, thank you, and we have a lot of them. So I'm just going to kind of dive right in. So both of you, in terms of Western Governors in Kentucky, talked a little bit about what some of the faculty processes are for either the development of the learning objectives or the assessments. Could you talk a little bit more, and I'll start with Kentucky and then move to Western Governors. Can you talk a little bit more about what the faculty process is, how they've been able to be engaged, how you've been able to build buy-in to participate into those, into that process, and talk a little bit about how you were able to kind of engage the faculty in developing those objectives and assessments.
This is Sandy, and I will take that question. When we first began the Learn on Demand concept, we involved our faculty through our curriculum committee structure. Within the Kentucky Community and Technical College system, we have curriculum committees that are made up of representatives across the 16 colleges. Because modularization was a different curriculum process for most of our curriculum committees, we did engage in some professional development around how you take your courses and your programs and you break them down into competencies wrapped in modules? How do you chunk out your competencies so that they fit together within smaller chunks within the course? The design of Learn on Demand is that the modules build toward the full course or the parent course, and the full course build toward credentials. And in Learn on Demand, individuals can build credentials starting at the certificate level through associate degrees.
Great, thanks. Sally, did you want to weigh in on that question too?
Sure. I hope this fits what people are interested in. From the perspective of WGU, it's kind of a slam dunk. We got to start from scratch. We designed our faculty model based on what we knew the students needed within this framework, based on a lot of research, and I was one of those designers. So I'm pleased to say that after, what's it been, 16, 17 years, the model's holding. So we hire faculty to do precisely what we know needs done, that is the design of the institution. And we have no trouble recruiting faculty, and once faculty begin working with us, turnover is very, very low. They rarely leave. But I do want to mention some other models. The 11 colleges with which I'm working across the country have looked at this in different ways. So at one college, not an unusual circumstance, in the department that they're targeting for their competency-based program, it's a big program, but they only have 3 full-time faculty, and they have about 70% of their teaching faculty being adjuncts. And the variability among the adjuncts, or let me put it this way, the variability among the student outcomes as they have had a variety of different types of instructors at the beginning levels in their program is huge. So when we started talking about this, the full-time faculty absolutely loved it, and what they're trying to do, and they have not enrolled students yet, they're just in the planning process, but they're talking about the full-time faculty will design and agree on the competencies, they will select the learning resources, and they will determine what the assessments are. And the adjunct faculty will act as the coaches and tutors for the students that move through those courses. Now, another of our colleges have taken a very different approach. They have a lot of faculty in the department who are full-time and have worked with the college for quite a while. And what they decided to do, as they broke down their courses, they have 3 faculty working together on each course. And the 3 faculty members will all agree on the competencies. Then they break off, and 2 of the faculty members will work on developing the learning resources, and 1 will work on developing the assessments. And then another member of the department goes through and makes sure those things are aligned so the students aren't confused. So the issue around this is there are many different ways in which faculty can and do work together to be able to be engaged and have different kinds of roles in this kind of environment. And what we're finding, at least with the colleges that are adapting their programs into CBE, the initial reaction is faculty are kind of, what do I do here? What's going on? Are you getting rid of faculty? Well, of course that's not happening. They're a critical part of the whole program. But they get to focus on what they prefer to do, what they like to do, and what they do best.
Great, thank you. Another question, oh, yeah, that's perfect, thank you. Another question that's come in is kind of, and I'm going to throw this back to Kentucky first as well, is that when you have an institution that's running both a kind of traditional model of education in addition to kind of a new model, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've experienced within your institution when you're trying to integrate this new model with that traditional time-based course completion type model within that same institution?
Bill, do you want to do that, or you want me to answer that?
Well, I was just smiling back here going, I think you had fought the wrong word. Yeah, I think I'll let you take it, but the observation that I would say is that it's more about I think education, learn by term, traditional term-based education has finally become, kind of funny, normal. So I think it's the idea that it's educating and bringing maybe awareness about competency-based and variable schedules as part of what's becoming the new norm. I think it's the same old fight that when we brought TVs in and brought telecourses in and brought remote video conferencing in, and it's the same discussion. It's just reaching another part of the community. Sandy, I think you probably have some better specifics.
Well, you got it right, Bill. But I would just like to start by saying it's to take a model like Learn on Demand and deliver it alongside with the colleges that also deliver term-based education has been a huge challenge. It's disruptive to pull in a model like Learn on Demand, which the processes, the procedures, the infrastructure are very different than what the colleges are accustomed to with term-based education. So we operate Learn on Demand in a very controlled setting through system office involvement with lead colleges. Bill mentioned initially that to begin a Learn on Demand program, colleges must submit a proposal. And we have principles and guidelines that colleges must follow as they both develop programs and courses for Learn on Demand delivery, and then as they deliver the programs in Learn on Demand. We provide centralized support through the system office involving our Blackboard infrastructure, PeopleSoft, also our coaches and our virtual student services. But the primary challenge, as Bill has mentioned, is that education of what does competency education mean and what does it mean to deliver education so that students can start any day of the year. That's been a challenge to change your entire mindset about serving students to get into courses every day of the year as compared to serving students to get in your traditional January, August, and May model. We've done a lot of communications, a lot of workshops. It's just been a challenge. First of all, to get the model out there, what does it mean, and how does it operate, and then how do you serve students who want to be in the Learn on Demand program?
Great, thanks. And Becky, in case you thought you were off the hook, you're not. The next question I'm going to ask you to respond to.
Excuse me, do you want me to answer that? I've got stuff to add.
That would be great.
Okay, Tori. We call one of the biggest things that we found in these campuses that we're working with across the country that are combining competency-based program with other parts of the campus, basically doing business as usual, are issues that we call fitting the square peg in the round hole. They have to do with registrar issues, financial aid issues, student support issues, a whole framework of activities. And we're currently in the process of gathering lessons learned from those campuses that have enrolled students and have had to make decisions. I'm not suggesting these are best practices, it's just information that this is how they did it. And there's some rather remarkable ways in which they've been able to work around without changing the structure of their campus and how it operates. And we hope to have those lessons in some kind of shareable form within the next couple of months, and we'll get them out into the field.
Oh, that'd be great. Okay, we'll make sure that when those are available, we'll post those on our website so folks can link back to it and have access to that.
Great.
So a lot of the questions that have come in have to do with kind of alignment, and it's something that we've been talking a lot about in the K-12 arena around competency-based education too. And so Becky, I'm not sure if you guys have looked at this as you've been looking across the country at various programs, but how are you seeing institutions kind of address alignment issues, either between, for example, a K-12 student moving into the environment, coming from a competency-based environment into a higher education environment that also is either competency-based or looking at the prior learning assessments and kind of helping with that transition? And how are you seeing institutions accepting kind of K-12 competency-based diplomas? And then how is it that you are seeing, then for some of these programs, how are they aligning these new models to kind of the traditional requirements from accreditation bodies? And I'll stop there because I probably have 3 more questions that also relate to alignment, but kind of around the transition from K-12 into higher ed into these new models, and then kind of the accreditation implications for the higher education institutions. Sorry.
So I think there are lots of different moving parts here, and so it might be helpful to clarify a few things. One is that most of the competency-based programs that are emerging are really being designed to target the adult learner, someone who has been out of the K through 12 environment for probably 10 or more years. So I don't think there is a sort of an urgent need from the perspective of a lot of these programs to align with the students just graduating from competency-based K through 12 approaches. Where the alignment piece comes in, I think, with higher education is what I was referencing earlier. Is kind of the larger effort within higher education to think about how do you define what the basic requirements are, or what you should expect a student to know and be able to do at an associate level, so someone with an associate degree versus someone with a bachelor's degree versus someone with a graduate level education. And there have been a lot of efforts to start to articulate those kinds of either competencies or abilities, or the actual terminology seems to be a moving target right now. For those programs, there is an effort through the Association of American Colleges and Universities, or AACNU, through their essential learning outcomes. They have what's called essential learning outcomes. That's part of their LEAP program. So that is, something that was developed in the early 2000s and is still being referenced by a lot of colleges who are working on developing their own competency frameworks. And the other initiative that's relevant in this conversation is the efforts of the Lumina Foundation and their degree qualifications profile. And those are both initiatives that have really attempted to look at what should a graduate know and be able to do. And there are some discussions now with the Common Core about how do we make sure that there is an alignment between the Common Core and the degree qualifications profile or the essential learning outcomes, so that we can figure out the transition points from K through 12 to college. But frankly, I don't think we're quite at that point where we have a clear pathway yet, but that's sort of where the discussions are. And so when we're talking about the competency-based degree programs that are emerging, we talked about how these colleges go about developing their competency frameworks, and Sally talked a lot about how Western Governors goes about developing theirs. And really it's looking to industry experts, looking at experts in the field to determine the competency-based framework for that degree program. Other colleges are turning to the Lumina Foundation's degree qualifications profile or the LEAP program's essential learning outcomes as a starting point for developing their own competency frameworks. I don't know, and maybe Sally or Sandy or Bill can weigh in on this, I don't know the extent to which these programs are also, turning around and looking at the pathway from K through 12 to those competency frameworks, and maybe they can weigh in on that.
Lori, do you want me to pick up on accrediting?
Yeah, first, I didn't know if either of you wanted to weigh in on Becky's point, and if not, we can, please address the accreditation question.
Well, I mean, Becky's point about alignment with K-12 is what's coming out of K-12 is what it is, and at Western Governors University, we respect a high school degree, but the it's still, when they come into WGU or they come into one of the colleges that's using a CBE program, it's still a matter of do they have the skills and how is that going to work? It's less a transcript issue, because the transcript is just going to be transcripted in the way it's
Okay, great. And if you want to address the accreditation question.
The Middle States and the Higher Learning Commission and the North Central Association, and have done work with New England and Northwest and WASC around these issues. And all of the accreditors are very quickly moving forward on ways in which they can accommodate to the institutions in their regions developing both competency-based education and direct assessment kinds of programs. And some of those associations are already up and running and have approved programs, and those programs then are moving through interesting worlds within the Department of Education, but that's linked into this as well. And there's a great deal of effort on the part of policy people to be sure that what we're doing with competency-based education and higher education can be aligned with the financial aid framework, as well as the way in which accreditors will be able to assess the quality of programs. I don't know if that's helpful, but if there are specific questions, I can talk about those.
Okay, great, thank you. So unfortunately, we're running up against time. We only have a few minutes left. So I'm going to turn it back over to Joe Harris to kind of wrap up and share with you some of the next steps following the webinar. Joe?
Thanks, Tori. Patrice, could you move to the next slide, please? Well, let me start by saying we'd like to really thank our presenters, Becky Klein-Collins from CALE, Bill Ryan and Sandy Cook from the Kentucky Learn on Demand program, and Sally Johnston from Western Governors, for lending their time and expertise today. On the screen you see the links to their individual sites. We've gotten messages from a few of you that have already visited the sites that there's a wealth of information on there that's available through their sites. Next slide, Patrice. I'd also like to remind you that an archive of today's event will soon be posted on our website, where you can find additional information and resources about competency-based education and college and career readiness and success. You can also find the previous webinars on CBE that were co-hosted by our friends at AYPF. As a follow-up to this session, you will receive a brief post-event survey link, and we hope that you will use it to provide feedback on today's webinar and suggestions for future events. Next slide. Finally, I want to give a big thank you to our moderator and organizer, Tori Serks, and to members of our tech support team, Patrice Fable and Kiana Abram. I want to thank you, our participants, for your involvement today. Have a great day, and we hope to see you soon at our next event. Take care.